would you like to go by?
Steve.
Steve is a veteran that we have here at CPAC 2022. As you can see, he and I disagree, but we're having a great conversation.
America's an Indian reservation.
It was once Indian land. I do understand that. He and I were talking about how he became more away from the right side.
I would say I'm a progressive socialist right now.
Okay. And we were talking about the idea of libertarians and conservatives, and you had an understanding of what conservatism was in this country. Would you mind telling us that?
I think what essentially is conservatism is basically an umbrella of different voter demographics.
And what were some of those demographics that you were telling me about a moment ago?
I don't want to offend anyone.
That's just differently.
Well, actually, that's kind of just, common sense. Because if a cop just beat down on a black guy, a bunch of black guys probably going to beat down on you.
Yeah, well, we don't really want to talk about race. We want to treat people with respect.
Prejudice is actually a fairly common human condition.
But we should be working away from it,
But as long as you try to have a clear and open mind and not resort to mindless nationalism
you brought up nationalism a couple times now. What is your understanding of nationalism?
Nationalism is when you support
trying to keep you in the video
and your government's policies and most likely a small sector within that country's 110%. That's nationalism.
Okay, so would you say that the folks who are backing Biden while he makes decisions that are detrimental to the country are nationalists?
No.
They're not?
I don't think... Look, I voted for Joe Biden, but I really wanted Bernie Sanders. I think he's more like... I look at Joe Biden as kind of like a caretaker, so somebody else can get in.
Okay.
Hopefully maybe Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg.
Okay, so you got to talk to me about Pete Buttigieg. What are his bona fides that have you wanting to support him as the
he's a gay man, and I'm a gay man, so...
Okay. What about policy? What about policy for the country?
Identity politics is...
It's definitely important to you, it seems.
Well... He was in the
I'm trying to keep you in the video. He was in
the army like I was, and I was in the closet then, so it was hard for me because that was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era. So.
I was in during the same time.
Yeah.
Well, how about his policy? How about his stance? How about the way he would lead?
He talked about a realistic response to climate change. Look, you can't totally shut down all oil and fossil fuels, but we gotta eventually move away from it.
Okay. Would you say the pace that we're going at now as they move towards the Green New Deal is a pace that we can sustain?
Look, addressing climate change is not going to be easy.
Fair.
But just like getting out of the Great Depression wasn't easy. Winning World War II wasn't easy.
Okay.
And it does require some sacrifice.
I'm going to switch sides here. My arm's hurting. Okay, so...
Do you agree with that?
Sacrifice is necessary.
Without sacrifice, you can't achieve.
I think where you and I disagree is the impact climate change has now. We get stuck.
The consensus of climate change among climate scientists is 99%, Keith.
So is science a democracy?
No, exact science is never exact science.
So there is no exact science, right? So we need to continue to challenge science.
I'd rather trust the judgment of people with degrees from MIT than folks who just have radio shows.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm one of those guys, by the way.
Beck.
So there's also folks that have been, their opinions and their scientific findings have been suppressed that have degrees from say, Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and the like. Yeah. They don't get the same push as folks that you're hearing from that you seem to agree with. Does that make sense?
There was one guy.
Degrees from say, Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and the like. Yeah. They don't get the same push as folks that you're hearing from that you seem to agree with. Does that make sense?
There was one guy, I can't remember his name, by any means necessary, and I think is
wanting...
Well, what about Richard Spencer?
I'm not familiar enough with Richard Spencer, but let me get
the alt-right.
Let me get this out. Would you say that trying to get justice from people of today for sins of the past is a fair way to approach?
To some extent it is, because I think when you look at the situation of Indians on reservations and
Native Americans,
and black people in ghettos, I think part of that has to do with the injustices of the past.
So what should the
just like the state of Israel is kind of only existed because the Holocaust happened.
So let's stay away from that one because there are some things. But what would be the responsibility of young people today who had nothing to do with what happened 100 years ago, 200
I think
years ago?
they need to read about it and understand that the reason why this happened is because they thought that these people were an inferior race.
And we're definitely against that.
Sir, okay, Keith, let me tell you something. People thought, there was a time, especially the church I grew up in, thought that I, a homosexual, was an inferior person.
Yeah, and we're against that.
And I thought for a long time that I was an inferior, largely because everybody else around me told me that gay is sick, gay is disgusting, gay is unhuman.
I hear you, man, and we're against that. And I'm glad our country's come as far. I have LGBTQ in my family. We treat them as human beings because they are human beings. So I'm sorry you went through that, man.
Were you, okay, are you religious at all?
I am.
Okay, what's your denomination?
I'm a Christ follower. Non-denominational follower.
Evangelical?
Nope, non-denominational follower to Christ.
Born again?
Not yet, but I don't know if I can get myself there.
Okay, what's your denomination?
I'm a Christ follower. Non-denominational follower.
Evangelical?
Nope, non-denominational follower to Christ.
Born again?
Not yet, but I don't know if I can get myself there. I would very much like.
Are you sure about that?
The people I associate